personal.
Geez, already done?
Guillermo, put it on the poll what you were talking about right before we went live. Key Lime Kitkat, yes or no? Because Guillermo was swearing somehow by the Key Lime Kitkat. You stumbled upon it where? We'll get to David Sampson in a second, but how many details do you want to give people on, were you hoarding them? You said it's limited edition, so you were telling people, hurry up and get as many as you can.
I haven't hoarded them yet, but I should think about it. So I was at like CVS, Walgreens, one of those, and I was going to pay, and I was like, man, I want a Kit Kat. And then I looked down, and I saw like just a special display. It said special edition Key Lime Pie Kitkat. And I said, you know what? I like a Kit Kat, and I like a key lime pie, but this may have gone too far. But it was like $1.50. So I said, you know what? Let me try this. So I got one of those. I got a regular Kit Kat just in case the key lime pie Kit Kat left a bad taste in my mouth. I got home. An impulse buy, Dan. Back in my days of retail, they used to have what they called impulse towers, where they had little trinkets. And the idea was to try to get someone to just grab a bunch of those things on the way out. And it worked with the key lime pie Kit Kat. So I get home, try the key lime pie Kit Kat. Incredible. Incredible. Maybe better than the actual Kit Kat.
Whoa.
Tasted
Whoa.
exactly
Whoa.
like a key lime
Whoa.
pie.
That's shocking. David, your thoughts here on what it is. Taste unseen or taste untasted, you would say what to what it is he's alleging there? The key lime pie Kit Kat better than the original?
I would give anything to taste a key lime Kit Kat, but I can't taste or smell anything still. So it would basically be just a Kit Kat.
David, how long has it been since
like
you've been able to taste
6 months,
anything?
right? 6 months?
Yeah. So I've met with a bunch of doctors, and they've all said that if you still have no taste and smell after 12 months, it may be gone forever. So I got COVID on January 20th. So we're coming on getting close to 6 months, but I've got time. I do these exercises where I smell licorice or coffee or garlic or
Farts.
onion. And about 10 days ago, I had a little bit of garlic smell, and that made me happy, but I haven't been able to smell it since.
Are you a picky eater?
Well, now I'm not.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. You could eat essentially anything now that you wouldn't have eaten before.
Yeah, it all tastes the same. So what they say is that your palate may actually change if you get your taste and smell back. So I have a hate food, which is olives, is my absolute hate food. I will not, if it touches anything, I can't eat it. And I'm going to try to eat olives. I actually did. I had a piece of vegetarian pizza because I still love the texture of pizza and candy, even though I can't taste it. And there was an olive on the pizza because I had to get it at the LA airport the other day, and I didn't taste it.
What taste do you miss the most?
I miss candy. I miss licorice.
Oh, yes. Red, I'm assuming, right?
No, black.
Oh, wow.
Really?
I'm an all black jelly bean. Good and Plenty is my favorite candy.
God.
Better man than I am.
God. Oh, Jesus.
So the backstory of that is I used to be small when I was young. And so people in grade school would take stuff from me because there was nothing I could do about it. So what I always chose was to like things that no one would want to take. And no one liked black jelly beans or black licorice. So it became my favorite because I would always get it.
You're a monster. That's a funny backstory, or not. It's a bit heartbreaking. Actually, you've started off in a couple of heartbreaking fashions because how worried are you that this seems like a dramatic lifestyle change to lose your taste and just these scents forever?
A tiny monster.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people dealing with a lot worse things than I am. I am quite fortunate. So I don't look at it as anything other than it's just a change. It's changed how I react to food. And the interesting thing is I forget that I've lost it every day. I'm like Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates. I wake up assuming I've got my taste and smell, and then I'll go to a meal and people would say, wow, this is so good. And I'll say, God, I got a bad batch, or the chef didn't make this dish right today because it doesn't taste good. And then I have the epiphany, oh my God, I can't taste it. Because what it means is everything tastes the same and it just tastes like nothing. So it's just plain.
Do you take advantage of this and eat extraordinarily healthy foods, like a way healthier diet than you used to?
No, I've always been pretty healthy, but I crave the texture. So I still crave the texture of candy and pizza and things like that. And I'm training for a bunch of marathons, so I'm eating whatever I want, whenever I want to. But no, my brain is starting to remember what tastes are. So I can taste, like I had a Hershey's Kiss the other day, and I thought it was stale, not hard, but just sort of tasteless. But then something kicked in when I sucked on the Hershey's Kiss, which is how I eat Hershey's Kisses. I don't bite them, I'll suck them down. And I think I had this sense of what chocolate is.
Does anything that you eat actually satisfy you if you can't taste it?
So my stomach gets full, obviously. So in that regard, I would say, but in terms of, oh God, that's so good, or what a great restaurant, I shouldn't go to expensive restaurants because it's not worth it. But I still find myself doing it because the food is supposed to be good. So therefore I think it's good. So in my mind, I say, oh God, this restaurant is just not good anymore. So I've stopped actually going to nice restaurants because that is just a waste of money.
I can't imagine anything worse.
Yes, you can. Don't say that.
No, I mean, this is bad. Just inconveniences. Obviously, there are things worse in life, but just in terms of daily inconveniences, this seems terrible.
Again, I have a different outlook, Chris. I think that it is what it is. So I'm lucky. My lungs were never compromised. I'm doing great. I'm healthy. Otherwise, it's just it's annoying more than anything because
I know you
you
have to say all that stuff, and you're right, but it must just suck.
It totally sucks.
Guillermo, put it on the poll at Batard Show. Hershey's Kiss, bite it or let it melt down at Batard Show.
Way to press him, Chris. I mean, that was fantastic.
You really did. You got him to fold under the single swinging light bulb of interrogation. So what, you must have a couple of horror stories though about like drinking expired milk, or has it caused something terrible?
So I love where your head's at, because what's in my mind constantly is Minority Report, when Tom Cruise got his eyes taken out and he went into the fridge where he had to recover, and he took those moldy sandwiches. I don't know if you guys have seen Minority Report. So I think about that all the time. So I never used to look at anything. I would just smell it. Now I find myself throwing away anything that is a day past the expiration date, where normally I wouldn't have to do that, but I can't take the chance. And milk, I have actually stopped drinking all milk. I don't put it even in French toast, in my French toast mix anymore. I don't put it in cereal anymore, even though I normally eat cereal dry, because I'm just worried that even unexpired milk is going to be nasty, and there'd be no way I'd know.
I wanted to talk to you when I saw all of this happen in baseball, because it seems fascinating to me, David, that everyone's cheating, and it's rampant in a way that is so ingrained into the fabric of what's happening now that I'm numb to it. It's one of these scandals that I'm like, I don't even understand how much of an advantage these guys have when they do this. So from your perspective, give us what you find to be most interesting about what's happening right now in baseball with all this spider tack stuff.
What's most interesting is that position players were okay with pitchers using foreign substances to get command, but they're not okay with pitchers using foreign substances to make them better. Do you know that now foreign substances have become performance-enhancing substances? They're PESs. It's the same thing as doing steroids for the position players or the pitchers. They're able to do things they weren't able to do before. I've spoken to players. I once spoke to Stanton about this. When he saw a ball do something that it had never done before, the way you hit in Major League Baseball is you only have a quarter of a second to know where to put the bat, where the ball is going to be. And you learn where the ball is going to be. You see the spin if you can, and you put your bat where the spin should be when the ball gets to into the hitting zone. But when balls do something different than they've always done, that's when these strikeouts happen. And it's just difficult for hitters to hit, which is why averages are down. So position players finally said it's enough, and they're calling out pitchers. And that doesn't happen very often because there's an understanding in baseball. Foreign substances, we're good with it. We're going to use rosin. We're going to use sunscreen. At Marlins Park, we had a vat of sunscreen, and we play with a roof. It's not to stop cancer. The sunscreen is used by players to make a mixture to use when they're pitching. I always loved when the sunscreen was out. I don't think you're understanding how funny that is to have sunscreen in a place where there's no sun. But when you start using other things and all of a sudden position players are thinking they can't make as much money as they used to because their numbers are so bad, then something happens. And baseball's just fumbled it. And it is such a nightmare right now. The memo they released is so bad. And the fact that they're making players stop cold turkey and giving players now a platform to say, I can't do it, I'm going to get hurt. And then they get hurt and they get to blame the commissioner for it. It's just a nightmare.
Is the reason that offense is the worst in that sport that it's been in more than half a century the fact that pitchers can use these substances?
It certainly is a contributing factor. Take a look at the way these balls move. There's all of these things on Twitter, these sites and these Twitter people who have tons of followers showing ball movement. And everyone just says, wow, look at that ball move. That doesn't happen by accident. It's not natural. It's not normal. That's why pitchers are getting hurt, because they're throwing 98, 99 all the time. That's not normal. The movement of the ball is not normal, and that's got to be done with something. And now we know what it is. Of course, we always knew, though.
What do you make of Tyler Glasnow saying the reason I got hurt is because they took away these substances from me?
I think that is the union getting ready for a collective bargaining negotiation. That's why Scott Boras made the statement he made. That's why Zach Gallen, who's a Scott Boras client, made the statement he made about Mike Hill. That's why Garrett Cole.
What is that statement? Can you just tell people so that the people who do not know, because Michael Hill is a friend of yours, what happened there?
Michael Hill used to be the president of baseball operations for the Marlins and was let go by Jeter at the end of last season. He is now in charge of on-field operations at Major League Baseball. Zach Gallen is a pitcher who was traded to the Marlins by the Cardinals for Marcell Ozuna, and then traded by the Marlins to the Diamondbacks for Jazz Chisholm. Zach Gallen's been hurt. He's now not hurt, and he decided to go public yesterday saying, in my last organization, we were told to use these foreign substances. Scott Boras' agent made a statement saying Mike Hill is a part of an organization like all organizations who tell their players to use foreign substances. And I know Mike Hill, and I was in an organization. We don't say to a pitcher, use steroids, or a position player. We don't say use spider tack, but we're okay when you do it until it goes too far. It's the same way I was with steroids. I knew the players were using steroids. And listen, I want to win as many games as possible. We're going to educate you that it's not good for your body and that it's illegal and that you're going to get hurt and it could impact your career. It could impact your sex life. But if you want to do it and hit home runs, I'm all in. When it comes to foreign substances, it's not illegal. It doesn't hurt you physically, and it makes us a better team because you get to pitch better. I'm all in. But to call out Michael Hill specifically, the way that's been done is just inappropriate. And it's done not because of Mike Hill. It's done because of the collective bargaining agreement that is up on December 1st. And there's going to be a fight like you can't believe. There's going to be a work stoppage, and it's going to be totally super depressing for the fans, all because of the ego of certain agents and the ego of certain owners.
You are positive there is going to be a work stoppage, that before the end of the year, there's going to be a work stoppage.
It's not like the sunrise, Dan. What do you mean I'm positive? No, I'm not positive.
I just haven't
No one is
heard this.
positive.
You said it flatly. You said it absolutely. And I have not heard that a work stoppage is coming nearly for sure. That I know the collective bargaining agreement is a problem. I'm guessing that the reason the penalties aren't stiffer for this stuff is solely because of the collective bargaining agreement, correct? Baseball can't actually come down on these guys.
Yeah, there's going to be part of the new collective bargaining agreement will actually be a rule about what substances can be used, and they're going to teach the umpires. I think the umpires will end up checking the players before the games to say, yep, that substance is good. Yep, that substance is good. Nope, get that out of your glove. And I think that is truly going to happen. And I do think there's going to be a work stoppage because the rancor that exists between players and management right now, and I've seen bad over 18 years. I mean, distrust and anger and vile bile, but it's worse now than ever. So I do believe there will be some sort of work stoppage, but I don't believe that we'll miss any games in 2022. I think that the off season will be screwed up, but the season will be okay.
The reason I asked that question that way, I know when you get it wrong, people come after you, like with the Major League Baseball All-Star Game being moved to Denver. You didn't think that logistically that could happen. But generally speaking, when you say something's going to happen around here, like, for example, Theo Epstein trying to create a path to get to commissioner of baseball. That stuff happened. So you are saying that there is a great likelihood that we'll get this season. It's not going to happen before this season, but when they go into the off season, we're going to not start baseball on time, and it's going to be a messy one. That's going to be a long time where a work stoppage is in play because of you've been at this for a long time, David. For you to say it's worse than it's ever been when you've lived through work stoppages.
So I actually have not lived through work stoppages. The last one was in 1994, and I got into the game in 1999. And that's something that Bud Selig was super proud of, as well as the union back in the day of Gene Orza and Don Fear. It was trouble and combative, but they always found a way to get an agreement done. The biggest problem that happened in baseball is when Tony Clark took over the union, and Tony Clark is a former player, and Tony Clark wanted all these things that were player comfort things in the last collective bargaining agreement. He wanted chefs, he wanted better planes, he wanted better food, he wanted better off days, he wanted different start times. All of it was crap when we were voting for the CBA. We were so happy that the players were focused on such meaningless stuff that they forgot about all the economic stuff. And that's all we cared about. And now what'll be interesting is they brought in an absolute killer into the union, including Boris and all the executive council are Boris clients. And now they realize they don't want to get taken advantage of. But the owners don't want to give in. They love what's been happening, and they lost a ton of money in COVID. So they're not going to give up any economic advantages. And that's why there's going to be a work stoppage.
And you foresee what happening, the end result of this scandal and what will happen next year when it comes to what gets negotiated. What do you think is going to happen here?
It will not be a blanket no substances except rosin, which is what is now what they're doing. The cold turkey that everyone's talking about, they're going to have to allow some sort of gripping agent to be used other than rosin by players. And they're just going to make it a different rule. So it's not a violation of the rule. What the players did wrong here is they went too far. They're like children where you gave them an inch and they took a foot. It was okay to use the sunscreen and the rosin and the pine tar, but then technology got better. Then they realized they could use more stuff that would make their pitches even nastier. And they weren't quiet about it. But then their performance got so good, the offense got so bad that the parents, meaning MLB and the commissioner and the owners, said, you know what? Enough. And that's what happened with the substances. But I think there'll be a rule that's more in the middle of cold turkey versus spider tack. It's going to be back in the middle.
David, I wanted to ask you further about the Zach Gallen comments and Scott Boras having a go at Michael Hill. How much of that is kind of a personal vendetta with Michael Hill, or was it more a signal towards the fact that he works for Major League Baseball and there is that potential work stoppage coming?
I think it's 30-70. He's not a big fan of Mike Hill. He's not a big fan of me because we would get in the way of him dealing with Jeffrey, and Scott Boras will only deal with owners. He doesn't like it when presidents or GMs get involved because owners, he can tap their emotion. He can say to Mike Ilitch, hey, you want to get a championship before you die, don't you? He can say to Jeffrey Lurie, you want to get a second championship, don't you? Here's how to do it. He can say to Ted Lerner, you want to get one, right? Well, sign my guys. But presidents and GMs don't fall for that emotion. We don't care. So Boras doesn't want to talk to us.
Does any of this ever stick to Manfred, or is he just protected by the owners?
All that Manfred cares about, just so you guys are very clear, because there's a great misunderstanding what the role of the commissioner is in all sports. Rob Manfred cares about 23 owners.
So you say 23 because specifically the majority. You're just saying, or the things to get votes ratified because you only need 23.
You need 23 owners to give you an extension on your contract. You need 23 owners to get a new collective bargaining agreement. You need 23 owners to get things done. And that's what he's focused on. So when Rob Manfred does something, he's not flying by the seat of his pants. That's not what he's like. He is extremely calculating. He's extremely Machiavellian. He understands what his role is, and he understands self-interest, self-preservation. It's not a matter of loving the game or not loving the game. People say he's not a fan. Who cares? We don't hire a commissioner to be the fan. We'll hire a Marlins man if we want a fan to be the commissioner. We want someone who's going to represent the interests of the owners and grow the game with money. That's what the commissioner's job is.
David, I would so fall for Scott Boras coming to me and saying, hey, sign my guy. You want to win a world championship before you die? Sign my guy. I would sign every guy. I mean, that is crazy.
Well, but do you write the checks?
No, he's great at writing other people's checks and stealing other people's checks. Yes, it's not when
Dan will sign him.
It's not when it's his money.
Do you know how quickly you'd blow through $50 million if you were in charge, Stu? Do you have any idea?
I do, actually.
Is Manfred good? Has Manfred been good?
He's gotten a rough deal, right? I mean, you can't be good during COVID. It's a no-win situation trying to deal with COVID. You could argue that Silver did it better, although I'm not sure he did. You could argue Goodell is better, but I'm not sure he is. But what Manfred is he's a businessman. He's a labor attorney. He is someone who is extremely smart and doesn't fall for things that other people may fall for. And that's frustrating to the union. It's frustrating to Scott Boras for sure. But Manfred doesn't care about any of that. So what's interesting is that Mike Hill released a statement, which was written by the PR people for Major League Baseball, of course, not by Mike, because that's how it works in baseball. And he responded to Zach Gallen's statements. And that's interesting. I talked about it on today's Nothing Personal, because that does not happen often, because what we're taught in baseball is you ignore Boras. Don't mention his name. Don't talk about anything he's talking about. Don't give him the platform or the power. But MLB had to respond to what Boras said.
Why?
Because they're losing the PR battle right now and losing it badly. And that is something they don't want. They still believe going into collective bargaining that having the people's side and having fans be on owner's side matters. I always spoke to the commissioner and to all the executives saying, who cares what the fans think? Our job is to get the best deal we can. We don't need the PR. We don't need to attract the attention of anybody with what we're doing. Just negotiate the best deal we can for ourselves. And then people forget about it because then you're playing games.
Do you think Michael Hill responded to kind of save the look of MLB or to save himself? Because last night when that stuff was coming out, I felt like Michael Hill's going to be the fall guy for this, because the way the Astros thing played out, they looked for a fall guy. It wasn't going to be the players, so they punished management. So it felt like that's kind of where this was going until he responded publicly.
Yeah, Mike Hill is paid by Rob Manfred, and Rob Manfred knows very well that Mike Hill had nothing to do with it. Mike Hill is just the name on the memo. Mike Hill is the one who speaks to the umpires and speaks to the managers and speaks to the players about stuff that's going on field. It's not that Mike Hill would ever be that kind of fall guy. And frankly, Theo is the one who's brought in to do all these things at baseball and change the game and make the bases bigger and all the pitch clocks and all the stuff that Theo's trying to do. So I was surprised that Theo did not speak up at all and that MLB did not have him speak up, but they're protecting him for whatever reason.
David, I'm surprised to hear you say that your feeling was that the PR doesn't matter. Do you not think that the overall decline in interest in baseball can be associated, at least in part, to decisions like these or public missteps like these, where there becomes less of an attachment to the institution of baseball, however nebulous that might be?
Yeah, I was actually talking about the PR surrounding collective bargaining. Remember during COVID when there was the fighting going on between the commissioner and all of the players, and the commissioner said, we may have to cancel the season, and he got absolutely torched, including on this show? He was trying to get people on his side, and that was the mistake. When I say that baseball doesn't care about PR, it's in terms of an agreement and in terms of getting the provisions they want. They care way too much about PR because they're jealous of the other leagues who get better PR. And so sometimes they do things solely for PR. And when you do that, that doesn't work either. It has to be organic.
One of the things happening in the NCAA, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Arizona State now and Herm Edwards being investigated for doing all sorts of things in recruiting and COVID illegal things. And I just feel like there's a general numbness where we assume everyone's cheating. In empirical terms, David, outside of the game getting slower, which I think is what hurts baseball the most in a fractured attention span, changed society, I don't think there's any actual damage to this. I think the integrity of the sport has been so befouled and the numbers have been so distorted and the way it's played has changed so much that I actually don't think there's any real consequences to the cheating other than nobody hits a baseball for 3 innings and you're going to a park to watch 3 innings of strikeouts.
Were there consequences to the steroid era?
I
from your
think
standpoint?
it was great for baseball. The steroid era was great. It was medicine for baseball. Brought them back after a work stoppage. This, I think, is a net nothing. I think it's a net nothing. You don't lose fans because pitchers are cheating. Steroids brought fans out to the ballpark.
So you have to put that in perspective. So from baseball standpoint, if steroids worked, what about steroids worked? Balls were going into McCovey's Cove, right? McCovey's Cove. Say that 5 times quick, Stu.
No, thanks.
So, yep. So that is what happens with steroids. That's why it was so good. It's funny. There was that whole, do you remember, it's not even good to say, I don't even know if we can say it live, chicks dig the long ball. Remember that whole commercial? That was a thing back then. And I'm sorry if that's offensive, but that was back then. I don't think they would use that now. Nobody says, hey, chicks dig the no-hitter, right? Chicks dig the strikeouts.
Right? No.
They love the walks. Ooh, give me more walks. So baseball's trying to say, hey, we've gone too far the other way. And so now they're trying to bring it back. It would be funny to me if part of the collective bargaining agreement allowed for players to get back on performance-enhancing drugs who are the hitters. That would be one way to combat this.
Well, here's a funny question, David. If somehow the use of substances increased offense in that sport, would anybody in charge have a problem with it?
Nope.
I love it.
But these substances decreased offense because only the pitchers were using it and the balls were moving in ways that the hitters couldn't hit it. Steroids, pitchers and hitters were using steroids. So while it was cheating, it was more of an even playing field.
No, but actually pitchers were using steroids trying to keep up, like Roger, let's say. But at the end of the day, steroids are much better for hitters. Steroids by pitchers were really used, like what Andy Pettitte said, used to try to recover from injury faster to get back on the field, because that's one of the things that certain steroids can do. But the majority of the people using them were the offensive players, were the hitters, and that wasn't used to cover injury or to replace greenies. It was used to actually give you the ability to do better than you could do otherwise.
Ryan Spader, a baseball analyst, wrote on Twitter the other day, I've had enough. I think I'm coming out with everything tomorrow, going to sleep on it. And then he came out with everything that he had. Everything I'm about to say was verified by more than one player. I do not mean to burn anyone, and I love baseball. I've just had enough of this bullshit. The Royals were the first team with a full analytics and video department close to their dugout, doing so in 2015, their World Series championship year. How they used it, I do not know. The Yankees had cameras in left, center, and right, all pointing at the pitcher's glove rather than the catcher to pick up his grip. And then you see that Aaron Judge's home and road splits are ridiculous in terms of when he was at home, he mashed the ball with help, and when he wasn't, he didn't. The Dodgers had an employee who was caught setting up cameras at Minute Maid Park wearing an MLB polo shirt when he should have been wearing a Dodgers polo during the 2017 World Series. This one hurts to say. My favorite player ever, Chase Utley, was the biggest cheater of all time. As insane as it sounds, I've heard this from multiple players. Adrian Beltre had a buddy with binoculars in dead center who would wave a undershirt if he was getting something off speed in 2017. And again, his home road splits are ridiculous as well. How much is real here, David?
What's real is that you just said undershirt, and that's not what the quote was. That made me smile. And it's absolutely guaranteed that this is going on with players and with teams. I was a part of it. We're looking for and I said this on the show during COVID when it was just me and Mikey. I said, hey, we of course were trying to steal signs at all times. There were people who were assigned to do nothing but steal the signs and figure out the signs, both from the catcher and even from the third base coach of the other team. That was their job because we weren't playing the bench anyway. And we had cameras, we had executives, we had everyone knew. The GM, the manager, everyone. I don't know that I even discussed it with Jeffrey because why would I bother? So some owners could claim they don't know, but everyone else does. And to say that Chase Utley, I just don't like platitudes like that, like something so binary. He's the greatest, the biggest cheater of all time, maybe only in the specter of cheaters you spoke to or who you know, but I don't want to put that on Chase Utley because you better come out with something better than Chase Utley's the biggest cheater of all time. You better have proof that he did something above and beyond what everybody else was doing. And I'm not sure he has that or he would have come out with it.
Wait, so David, it just appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Astros were just better at this than everyone else.
That's not appear. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. They were simply better at it. And we were jealous of them. I remember so well talking about the fact that we were not able to do what other teams were doing, not just by developing players and drafting players, and we got caught with bad signings and bad trades. We couldn't cheat as well as the other teams. And I would sit with the other executives and say, what's wrong with us? Even if we can't figure out how to develop a good player or scout a good player, can't we at least cheat as well as the other teams?
So now, like, in the role of pundit, do you like castigate teams that are cheating? And why did you not feel when you were in baseball that there was some, I guess, purity to it and that you didn't want to cheat? Like, why did you feel that it was okay to cheat when you were in it?
What are we, in a convent? What are you talking about? Wait, you think I had like a moral dilemma in my brain? Oh my God, I can't do that. That would be terrible to try to steal someone's signs. I'm not exactly stealing their pension. I literally don't even understand what you're talking about.
Okay, but David,
I love
but
the
David,
idea that your question is, so tell me about what was your morality? And he's like, what are you talking about? Morality? I'm trying to win. I'm not trying to help people in a nursing home.
but the only reason this is a news story is because people are presumably bent out of shape over the notion of cheating.
You're totally right. No, but he's a scoundrel. But he's telling you, because it's nothing personal, this ain't a .org. Like, everybody is trying to beat everybody for money, and that's business, and sports is business. And just because fans want to be Pollyanna about it, he's in the middle of it, and he's telling you, don't be silly. We were all trying to out-cheat the next guy if we could get away with it.
I couldn't possibly add anything to that.
So then I guess the question is, like, what's to stop you from did you attempt to break every rule in the rule book, essentially?
The rule book is this thick. What are you doing? No, I did not read the rule book rule by rule and have a committee saying, how can we break rule 749, part 4, sentence G? No. But what I said is, what rules can we break that can help us win more games? Because everyone else is doing it, we might as well try to do it too.
The important ones, Chris, is what he's saying. Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the audience is with you, by the way, Whittingham, but he's just cutting through it coldly and telling you that executives aren't doing that math. You either try and find winning in the margins, however it is you can, or you will lose to the people who find it. Like, it's not like who was viewed as a moral sort of executive who would never dabble in this sort of stuff? Was Dombrowski? Was Dombrowski out here?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He would not do anything. No. Take the high road every time. Hold on. Let me look through the Encyclopedia Britannica of former executives. Hold on. Let me look.
Let us know when you get to one.
Oh, he definitely did. Oh, no. Yeah, he did too. Oh, wait. No. Yeah. Yeah. Nope. None of them. Zero.
Is the problem, though, that fans care about cheating, but only when the other teams are cheating, and no one really cares when their own team is cheating as long as you win a World Series, right?
Those Astro fans are despondent, aren't they? They're crushed.
Like, if you told me the Cubs cheated in 2016, it's not going to make me, like, be sad that I celebrated them winning the World Series for the last 5 years.
Can we the word cheat bothers me a little bit. So when you do something that you know is against the rules, but you also know that while it may be giving you an advantage, you still need to perform, right? So that's like when I do something. Is it cheating when I put lifts in my shoes?
Good point.
Yes.
Do you?
Because why? Well, tell me the impact that's having.
Dishonest. You're being dishonest about what your height actually is.
I actually don't wear lifts because they're too uncomfortable for me. But believe me, I've thought about it. I used to love dressing up and going to costume parties, and I would always dress up like as Madonna or something. And I would wear heels because I loved the concept of actually being able to dance with a girl in middle school or high school where I could put my hands on over the waist of the girl instead of on top because they were all so much taller than I. So it is something, but that's sort of cheating, right? You're doing it in a way to try to be better. And the concept, have you ever heard this cheat to compete? We're not doing anything that is hurting people to the point where we are risking their lives. This is sports. This is competition on the field. I think people just need to take a bit of a breath here.
I don't want to be a broken record, but this is all good for baseball. Like we spent the last hour talking
You're right,
about it.
Chris,
Like,
yes.
David, is this bad that the baseball's in the news? Like, who's really not watching baseball? If you were watching baseball, you're still watching baseball.
There's not been one fan who went away because of the sign stealing, because of steroids, because of foreign substances. And the fact, I'd rather, you could talk about Shohei Ohtani, and you could talk about the San Francisco Giants and the White Sox, but guess what? Boring. Totally boring. You wouldn't spend 5 seconds on the San Francisco Giants on this show, would you?
Well, we did the other day just talking about Brandon Belt.
That's
and
right,
We
yes,
were enjoying that.
Brandon Belt.
He's still there playing first base. I mean, it's crazy.
So when players like Mike Fiers say that they feel guilt about the cheating because they cost other players their livelihoods potentially getting sent down, you just think that that's naive?
Whatever. Mike Fiers, right? Don't get me started on him. Please. I mean, he violated several rules. You don't snitch ever, right?
That's
just
the
not
rule you
something
can't break.
That's the only rule that we adhere to is the don't snitch rule.
Is there another rule?
To cheat everywhere else. You've just laid bare that everyone in baseball is trying to cheat, but don't you dare snitch, you immoral shit.
Fire trays.
It's unbelievable. Like, that's where you apply the morality. Like,
That's the line. I will do anything I have to do, but I will never tell on someone else. Now, it doesn't mean that I will not draw to the attention of umpires during a game when I think the Frank Robinson or the Expos or another team is doing something to violate the rules, or when I see another player being so obvious. Do you remember when Michael Pineda had the foreign substance that was on his neck? I don't know if you guys remember this. I don't remember what year it was. It's certainly
like a different skin
GTS.
tone.
It was totally insane. When we see that, we're going to say something. And we're doing that because we want teams to try harder when they're cheating and not be obvious about it.
Okay, very good. So Andy Pettitte during a World Series game was tipping his pitches. He got bombed and the Yankees lost. What is the greatest example you have in your Marlins history of cheating successfully? Of when you guys did something and it's memorable to you because you were able, and catching a pitcher tipping pitches isn't actually cheating, but what's an example of a successful cheat by the Marlins while you were there?
Yeah, so when you say tipping pitches, that's something you also look for. And that is, again, there's no rule about any of that. That is something you do want to do. And Jose Fernandez used to tip pitches sometimes, and we would talk to him about it because it's like a tell in poker. You don't know you're doing it. That's what the definition of a tell is. And when you discover the tell, you don't say anything. But in baseball, it doesn't work that way because when a good pitcher gets rocked, you have to say either one, you're hurt, or two, you're tipping pitches. Because pitchers who get swings and misses, when they're not getting swings and misses, that means hitters know what's coming. So that was the first thing. The second thing is we would screw around with the roof, and we would screw around with the grass, and we would screw around with the sprinkler as a pro player. And what we did is that we would want to take the other visiting team out of its rhythm. Baseball is a very rhythmic sport. BP's at a certain time, the anthem's at a certain time, pitchers warm up at a certain time. And we would do things that would interrupt the rhythm of visiting teams as much as we could.
Like, what would you be doing with the sprinklers and the grass?
So we would cut the grass in a certain way, depending on what the opponent was. If it's an opponent with speed at the top of their lineup, we would cut the grass in a way that would make the grass longer, so the ball would shorter, so the ball would get to the fielder faster. We would do something in the outfield. Ichiro had specific ways that he liked the grass cut in the outfield, and we would cut it that way for him. But when we knew that we were playing against other teams and we would be told that those players liked the outfield a certain way, we'd cut the grass differently for them. When we knew the weather was going to be bad, sometimes we'd keep the roof open and make it really hot in the ballpark for visiting BP. Sometimes a pro player, we would make sure that the tarp was not on in proper time, so BP would get canceled more than it should have. So we would try, again, anything to disrupt rhythm.
When it worked, would you guys celebrate? How would you celebrate? Were there high fives, you and the grounds crew? How does this work, David?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, we wouldn't involve the grounds crew. We just tell them what to do. We're not saying to the ground, we're not implicating the grounds crew by saying, hey, we've got this team coming in, so do this. We just say, here's what we want, here's what we want. And they don't ask questions, and that's their job, not to ask questions. They just do what we want. But no, you don't celebrate that because, by the way, when we're on the road, teams are doing that to us.
Right.
So it's totally normal.
Guillermo, put it on the poll. Is the grounds crew's job not to ask questions?
How much is that affected by football season in September, though?
Well, back at Pro Player, we used to love that when we had the dirt and we had the chalk lines. Sometimes we'd keep the chalk lines actually stronger than other times because it can be distracting to fielders. If you remember how Dolphin Stadium, when baseball would be playing, there'd be chalk lines. I used to love watching the Dolphins play on dirt between first and second base. It was part of the field. It used to make me laugh. But listen, the bottom line of this show is what people don't understand is that what you call cheating, what we're calling trying to gain every possible advantage to do the job that we're paid to do. It's that simple.
David Sampson makes a rogue and renegade appearance today on the second edition of Cinephile. What do you have for us on that front, Chris Cody?
I just want to tease the episode with a 2.5-second clip. Everyone thinks Adnan Virk, nicest man in the world. Well, I unleashed David Sampson on him, and it makes Adnan Virk say this.
Support Cinephile, Dave. You don't have to be a dick about it.
Oh, my God.
What?
Oh, my God.
Whoa.
Holy what is that? Adnan Virk, that's happened.
Well,
Support
first of
Cinephile,
all,
Dave. You don't have to be a dick about it.
I got the Zoom information, and it was the Zoom room that I used to do the appearances here on the local hour. I didn't know that. I thought we were doing a taping of the local hour. That was the presentation. And then I get in the room, and Adnan's there. And Adnan's fine and everything, but he thinks he knows about movies. He's just gotten cocky since he joined your ship, right? He thinks he's this amazing guy. And basically, he doesn't know any more about movies than I do. He knows way less. He just likes to quote them because he does research, and I'm doing everything off the top of my head. I could do an entire show with IMDb tab open and impress you with my trivial knowledge of crap, but I don't do it that way. So there's Adnan. So I just decided to join the show because he was talking about movies, of course, that I had seen, but I found it to be less than interesting, especially when he called me a dick, and my name's not even Richard. And he doesn't know me to call me that. He doesn't deserve to be able to call me that. You got to meet me first and then call me that.
You don't have to be a dick about it.
Shocking. Cinephile.
Madman.
Rate, subscribe, and review. We'll get to David Sampson's movies in a second. Why are you shaking your head no, Billy? Just how generally lazy Stugotz is? Yeah. I appreciate the audience. The audience suggested to me, I had not, Bo Burnham did, that was extraordinary during the pandemic. It's about mental illness. It's art. It's funny. I haven't seen anything like it before. So thank you to the audience members who recommended the Bo Burnham comedy special, because it is comedy for our times in the last year. And David, what are you reviewing this week?
Well, can we talk about the Bo Burnham, or did you talk about it more?
No, I haven't talked about it, but I just thought it was a work of art because he took us in the pandemic into a closed space where he was wrestling with his mental illness. He used to have panic attacks when he'd get up on stage. He's one of the most famous YouTubers that there have been. He's a brilliant comedian and musician, and what he put together is a work of art, but it also seemed lonely and painful and depressing and hard.
So never heard of him because I am old and white. And it turns out to me, when I was told by someone from Nothing Personal, I get movie suggestions all the times by listeners who rate, review, and subscribe to Nothing Personal when you ask them to, that I thought he was the guy from Promising Young Woman. That's where I recognized him from. That's it. But I was told to watch this, so I did. And I didn't move the entire time. I was devastated watching it because he wasn't acting. And I didn't realize how brilliant he was. And the movie about Instagram is one of the song about white women and their Instagram was one of the funniest songs I've ever heard. The pain, and when he talked about suicide, when he talked about the dark loneliness, the depression, and he was the editor, the cameraman, the writer, the producer, the director, and the one-man show. He did everything because he was alone during the pandemic, and you could see the process unfolding. If you haven't seen it, I strongly suggest it. It's the second best. Derek Delgado is the best thing I've seen, sort of the one-man show type of thing since the pandemic started. But this one is a must-see. And it's not an easy watch, but you will laugh, but you'll also cry, and that makes it pretty compelling.
Well, you'll talent and brilliance, because the song you mentioned, I didn't even think was the best one, the Welcome to the Internet song that he did, where it's 5 minutes of just straight brilliance that I don't know. I can't believe that guy, how long that had to take to make just those 5 minutes, just smart writing, great performance, and funny camera work. I can't suggest it strongly enough.
And at the end, he actually show you, if you stay till the end of the credits, there's a payoff. He shows you a little bit about how he films some of the things, and you realize to get a shot that lasts 1 second in a montage, what he had to do to prepare that, being solo and being alone in this dark room, this white, it felt like a padded cell to me. And I assume that's what he was going for. There's no art on the wall, but it's a very artful presentation using computers and what they can do. This type of show could never have happened before computers and the internet and all of the things that are now that we're able to do. But it took something to make that show that I can't even. He never told us how long he took to film it, though.
But wait, going back for a second, what's wrong with having tiny pumpkins on my Instagram feed? I love tiny pumpkins, David. Why is that funny? A pumpkin? It's just a cute little pumpkin. Put a little crown on my dog, flower crown. What's wrong with that?
Do you actually think I'm going to take your bait? Like, do you actually think there is a chance that I'm going to engage with you on this subject?
What is the movie that you are reviewing this week, David Sampson?
Reviewing Jessica. Okay, I want to get serious and talk about a documentary I watched called Roll With Me. Since we're talking about serious things, Roll With Me is a documentary from 2017 about a man in a wheelchair who was a drug addict. And he decided he was about to die. And instead of dying of a drug overdose, he decided to wheel across the country in a regular wheelchair, not a motorized wheelchair, not one of these built up, Oscar Pistorius Blade Runner wheelchairs. I'm talking just a regular wheelchair where you have to use your gloves. And they documented it. And it's the story of the 7 people plus him who went across country, and he went from California to his home on Long Island. It is incredibly emotional. And what it shows is that the human spirit is something that has no end. If you put your mind to something, you can do it. And he saved his life. He saved other people's lives. If you are addicted to drugs or pills or heroin, there is a way out. Just like if you're having suicide thoughts, there's a way out. There's numbers to call. If you see Roll With Me, you'll be inspired and realize that you are so lazy, right, in your life. And I try to run. I already ran my workout this morning, but I felt so lazy watching Roll With Me, watching what he did. It's a great documentary. It's on Netflix. It's called Roll With Me.
Guillermo, put it on the poll, please. Should Oscar Pistorius's nickname have been Blade Leg? At Batard Show. Nothing Personal is the podcast. If you want sort of an undistilled, pure cut of how the business of sports works, Nothing Personal, you should go check it out, because you don't hear what you just heard there, which is a former major league executive just telling you, yep, we were all trying to cheat.
You never hear
morality be damned. David, thank you for being on with us. We appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, David. happy birthday without any caps or exclamation points. That's unbelievable.
A text with just happy birthday exclamation point is not much better than a Facebook post.
No, I
I don't think the Sixers are. And I think that's accentuating the things he can't do. It's no different than if we had Shaq, right? We all call Shaq the most dominant player, and oh my God, he's unstoppable. He's one of the greatest players. But if the way the Lakers used Shaq was to give him the ball 23 feet in the basket and say, make your way to where you're a good scorer, he would look really, really pedestrian. And we kill him for that. Instead of saying, well, wait a second. Why does he have the ball right there? Why can't we get him the ball somewhere where he's more impactful?
In fairness to Ben Simmons, Dan, in that second, they needed someone to step up, anyone to step up, because it wasn't going to be Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris was really bad last night as well.
Okay, fine. But trust the process wasn't about Tobias Harris.
You're right.
Trust the process was about Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. Can those two guys be better than everyone when you go up against another team that also has superstars? And StatMuse gave out the stat because, I mean, I don't want to be prisoner of the moment, but the Sixers didn't make a shot for more than 6 minutes down the stretch. They blew a 26-point lead and had a 99.1% win probability. You just don't see that from a one seed at home, ever.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bad loss. I mean, nobody's going to say, oh, well, actually, this happened and that. No, they played bad. Two guys scored in the entire second half for them. By the way, Curry scoring a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, it was an all-round failure. Look, the memes are going to fly. The jokes should fly. We should be mocking them. We should be making fun of them. We should be making fun of Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers and Embiid and all of them because they earned it with that performance last night. But I'm not ready to do the Skip Bayless jump up. And because this just happened, it means it invalidates everything else we know about these people.
But so you are kind of being, cool-headed about this, but I just get the feeling that, like, Ben Simmons is one of the two best players on a team that wants to win the championship. He's got too many flaws in his game for that to happen at this point. And also, like, if you're playing with Simmons, that's one less spacer on the floor, and that takes room away from Embiid. So if he's going to be in the dunker spot where, Joel Embiid can work, like, I'm not sure this is a combination that can work. Now, they can still come back and win the series, and given how bad Milwaukee has been, how injured Brooklyn is, maybe even get to the finals. But I'm just not sure that this combination can work together long term.
I mean, they had from Embiid the game you need from him on one leg. Capella's got no chance on anything Embiid is doing in the post. They got the Embiid game, and they lost it anyway because they couldn't get anything from anyone else other than Curry.
They got the Curry game. They wasted the Curry game.
They wasted the Curry game, yes, but I think, again, their success should not hinge on did Embiid have the game of a lifetime. And again, I point out, Embiid's second half, 3 of 9. That's your game of a lifetime from Embiid? That's him bringing it in the second half? So the blame is thickly laid across everybody. Doc's got to do a better job of putting his guys in a position to be successful. The guys got to be able to hit open shots. Ben Simmons has to find a way to be aggressive despite being a foul liability out there. And Embiid has to be able to have the stamina to carry through for, the second half of the game. He was great in the first half and in the second half. And we're kind of giving him a pass because literally everyone else was terrible.
That's 2 second halves, right? Because he was 0 for 12 in the second half before this one. Let's spin the wheel of issues here for Amin. Here's what's on the wheel of issues. It's Stan Van Gundy. It's Scott Brooks. It's Luka. It's Donnie Nelson. It's all of these injuries. It's Paul George last night, and we just did the Sixers. I hope it doesn't land on that. Go ahead and spin, just from yesterday, the NBA wheel of issues. I mean, you have your glasses on. Can you see what it landed on there?
It's a little foggy. I should clear it up. Can you guys pick? I can't see.
Not pick. It's
Sixers.
It's been picked. Sixers. God damn it.
Sixers.
Damn.
Oh.
What are the odds?
I could stay with the Sixers. I mean, I'm fine with that.
It's not for you, though. It's for Amin. I don't care about.
Spin it again.
I don't care about your thoughts on the Sixers.
He's passing.
Jesus, Sixers again. I can't believe it. Go ahead, Amin. Give us some extraneous. I feel like we've beaten the Sixers to death, but this is the thing to laugh about today. How about our friend Pablo saying, this is pathetic. The Hawks fouling Ben Simmons on purpose down 20. Like, today is the day to laugh at Pablo, is it not?
It's all Pablo's fault. I truly believe Sam Hinkie would still be employed today if he didn't know Pablo Torre, if he didn't talk to Pablo Torre.
Put it on
Pablo
the
Torre
poll.
wrote that article.
Guillermo, put it on the
That's a
poll.
great poll
Would Sam
question.
Hinkie still be employed as the Sixers GM today if he didn't know Pablo Torre?
Pablo wrote that cover story on ESPN, the magazine, and that's when everything changed. They had a nice little quiet experiment. Nobody was paying attention. They're like, oh, the Sixers are bad, but they're rebuilding. And then Pablo writes all about the process and trust the process and all that. And that becomes such a polarizing thing in basketball about the Sixers uber tanking. And as a result, it puts all this undue spotlight and pressure on what's happening. And they're not good yet. And they're not good yet. And this is bad for basketball. And Sam Hinkie's out of a job. But Pablo, he rides high, right? He rides on that wave of stardom. He gets ESPN The Daily and his own TV show, and he's on Around the Horn. Life's good for Pablo.
I also love the idea that we just don't understand Ben Simmons shooting 4 of 14 from the free throw line. That there's some great mystery to Ben Simmons as we're watching him play one of the worst playoff games a star has ever played.
The thing that can be said for Ben Simmons, and I think this is still statistically accurate, I mean, that no one creates more threes for his team than Ben Simmons does. That one of the reasons that the Sixers are good is because they have shooters, and one of the reasons those shooters are good is because Ben Simmons creates. But I do believe we've shifted. What does Paul George have to do for us to shift from Paul George can't do it in playoff games? He just won an enormous one on the road. And while Ben Simmons is coughing up something as the number 2 guy, that's a 26-point lead with a 99.1% win probability at home.
Stugotz, what does Paul George have to do in order to shift the stuff off of him?
He's got to do it in the next game. I mean,
yes, do it again.
There you go.
It's always do it again. Yes, and keep doing it again. After he does it in Game 7 of the finals to win the trophy, he's got to do it the next day during the parade.
back to back.
Yes.
You got to repeat. He's got to repeat after that. You win a championship, win another one.
I mean,
And then
what
I'll
do
be
you
impressed.
say to the people who think Doc Rivers has to take Ben Simmons out in that spot? That he has to because they're fouling. They're hacking Ben Simmons. What do you say to them?
So my thing is this, and again, we went through this when we had Shaq in Phoenix. We told them, look, every time they foul you, 2 things are happening. 1, there's another guy on their team who's going to get in foul trouble sooner. 2, our team is going to be in the bonus a lot sooner. We're shooting free throws with the 8-minute mark, which means what? It means that if Steve Nash is bringing the ball up 50 feet away from the basket and the guy checking him gets a little aggressive, that's 2 free throws for the greatest free throw shooter of all time. If Amari Stoudemire catches the ball and rips through 20 feet from the basket on his way to the basket, that's free throws for him. And so we were encouraging him, get fouled 20, 30 times. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep building the offense. I don't know if Ben Simmons is getting that kind of messaging. And then the other thing is, once we're in the penalty, now we can sit them. And now we can start to take advantage of their inability to defend us without fouling. But I don't understand the idea of just letting him get out there and have his confidence shot and then not taking advantage of it anywhere else on the floor.
Spin that wheel again for me, Whittingham.
Well, no, it says spin again.
It's the Sixers
Oh
again.
my
God, I thought it was going to be the. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We need it. Again?
Mavs.
What are the
It
odds?
says Mavs.
No, your glasses are no good. But I want to hear about the Mavs anyway. Go ahead and give us what you've got on the Mavs because Donnie Nelson being fired. So the Athletic comes out with this article and Mark Cuban calls it bullshit. And it's about Bob Voulgaris' shadow GM increasing power, friction with Luka. Now there's going to be a press conference with Luka today and he hasn't signed an extension. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think he's going to sign an extension. Nobody in the history of basketball has turned down the rookie scale extension when it's at the max level. In the case of Luka, it's going to be 1 level higher than the regular max for someone of his experience. He's going to get the Rose Rule max, which is $200 million roughly over 5 years. Yeah, he's not turning that down, guys. I'm sorry. It's never happened. It's not going to start now. But there is some serious damage control that needs to happen within the Dallas Mavericks organization. I think what the article hinted at was a friction, not between Luka and Bob Voulgaris, as I said in my essay yesterday, but more about a friction inside that front office. And they've got to figure all that out because that dysfunction does seep down to where the players are, and it does impact how the team does.
Doesn't Donnie Nelson being out validate that report?
I mean, look, the thing that I know about that report is that somebody inside the Mavs spoke. That's what we knew. Whether what they said was factual or not, right? For instance, there's a part in there where they talk about Bob got up towards the end of a game and went to the end of a loss, and everyone was miffed about that, like this guy just quit on the game. But the reality is, Bob, as there are many staffers on many teams in this league, goes in before halftime and before the end of the game because they got to get the info ready for the team when they come back in the locker room. I know this as a video coordinator. I did this too. I had to go inside because you got to get the stuff ready so that when the team comes in, we've got our video ready, we've got our talking points ready, whatever. That wasn't a we are about to lose this game thing. That was a I got to go get my job done. And so the idea that that would be construed as Bob quit on the team or whatever tells you this is coming from inside and this is coming from someone who has an agenda.
Donnie Nelson had been there how long? A quarter century?
25 years or so, yep.
So what does it mean? It means that it's no longer Bob Voulgaris shadow GM, correct? It means Bob Voulgaris is the power broker there now.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, because I think there is more to the job than just, hey, we should get this player, and hey, these are the lineups we should run, which is ostensibly what a lot of Bob's job is lineup kind of validation and trying to figure out what the best possible combinations are, the substitution patterns and all that. And also, like, player evaluation. Negotiation is a different task, right? We talk about GM. One of the biggest things is my ability to negotiate with agents, my ability to negotiate with other teams. Most importantly, my ability to negotiate with my owner to make sure that the things that we want are the things that we get, and the things that we're not so crazy about, we keep them away. That's the GM's job. And so while I know Bob, and I think he's great at talent evaluation, I don't know about his negotiation skills. I don't know about his interpersonal skills from a leadership standpoint.
Well, no, you said he could be an asshole. You do know about his interpersonal skills. You said flatly that he can be an asshole.
Yeah, but and also I've never met Bob, the leader of an organization. Maybe there's a change that happens to him when he realizes the actual mantle of leadership is upon me, and now I have to behave in a different way. Maybe he's just being an asshole, kind of the way that I'm an asshole. I don't have to. No one answers to me, so I don't have to worry about hurting anybody's feelings. But the reality is, once you're in an organization, you're rising up, that becomes more and more important.
But I mean, stuff like rotations and lineups and combinations, shouldn't that be Rick Carlisle's job?
Well, the idea is that he's providing information that helps Rick do his job better. And that's all, in a perfect world, that's all any of us want. We want someone who's going to be the decision maker, and then we want everybody else to be supplying information for the decision maker to use to make better decisions. I don't think it's Bob's way or the highway, but I do think Rick is on board with the suggestions that Bob makes.
The most significant injuries from all of them are?
Oh, man. Kawhi Leonard, because indefinitely, and the rumble is perhaps out for the rest of the playoffs with this ACL sprain, ACL partial tear, however they're classifying it. And so the Clippers truly don't have a chance. I mean, they might win this series, but they're not going to get much further. With regard to Chris Paul's COVID protocol, I don't know, we count it as an injury?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I mean, the deal is, allegedly he is vaccinated, which doesn't mean you can't be in protocol, but it does mean you can get out of protocol sooner. And so if you're the Suns, you're rooting for a game 7 in that other series, because the more you delay it, the more time Chris Paul has to come back. And so I expect him to be back, unless he actually has COVID. I expect him to be back in time for the start of the series. So I'm not as concerned about that one. The Danny Green one, maybe that one was a big one for them, given how they shot last night. And then finally, Kyrie Irving. I think if Harden's healthy, then Brooklyn's all right with Harden and Durant. I think if Harden is not healthy and he's just been kind of faking it out there, then that probably puts a huge lid on Brooklyn's chances.
Mike Conley is the one that kind of gets left out in this discussion because it happened like early on in the playoffs, and so everyone forgets that. I mean, Utah is not able to come back against the Clippers, at least in part because Donovan Mitchell, who himself is hurt, is probably doing too much because there's no Conley.
Yeah, yes and no, Woody, because Conley at least has a chance of coming back. He's got a chance to come back. And Donovan Mitchell, I would say, is probably the more important injury because you're talking about it. You talked about it last night, his lack of explosiveness. He can't, get separation, and that's impacting. We saw in the second half of that game down the stretch where he just dribbles up and takes a three-pointer. Now, the Jazz offense is all about dribble, drive, penetration, the ball moving around and everything, and all of a sudden, we're just getting one guy, dribble it up, take a three-pointer, and then run back, and that's not what's successful for them. So I would say Donovan Mitchell's injury, despite him actually playing and being on the floor, is more devastating to them than Mike Conley's absence.
Reggie Jackson. What the hell?
Ooh, Mr. October.
Yeah, Mr. June. Yeah.
Mr. June.
Stan Van Gundy's watching that after giving him a max deal and being like, you.
It just goes to show, though, it's all about where you put people. You put people in a position to be successful. So in the case of Reggie Jackson in Detroit, they were asking too much of him. He's not good enough to do that every single night. But if you ask him to do it twice in the playoffs, you give him one of those, it was worth it, right? It, like you're celebrating. The expectation is such a funny and fickle thing that if Paul George has that 30-point game in game 5, and everyone's like, oh, Paul George did it, and he did a great job. And I'm like, Kawhi literally had a better stat line across the board. But that's what Kawhi always does. We just kind of like, all right, that's cool. But Paul George, we put his thing up on the fridge with a magnet right here so the whole house can see what a great player you've been today, right? So that's why we kind of are derisive towards him, because he's paid like a guy who's supposed to do it every day. But in actuality, he's not the guy who's delivered it every single day in the playoffs. Now, he's done it the last 2 games, and they're on the brink of winning their series, and that's why we're like, all right, fine, now do it again.
I like Stan Van Gundy's analysis during Freedom when Stugotz asked him about the best team he had seen this year. And what he said is, what I saw from the regular season is the Utah was the team that can most consistently play to its highest level, but the Clippers are the most talented team, and that in the playoffs, what you see happening is more often than not, it's not about consistently playing to your highest level, but whose ceiling is higher. And he thought the Clipper ceiling was higher. I don't see how the Clipper ceiling can be higher, though, without Kawhi Leonard. I was still surprised, even with Utah being a little bit broken, I was surprised to see Paul George win a road playoff game like that.
Stan Van Gundy was on Freedom?
That's right.
And you remember?
Well, I know Amin doesn't. Amin,
I asked the question. I don't remember.
Amin doesn't certainly remember. He was drunk by 3:00. The Stan Van Gundy thing yesterday. How surprising was it to you? Because I know he was unhappy, but I don't think he was going. I didn't think it was going to last that short, and I assumed that he was run out because the younger player didn't like. I just saw some quotes that were damning from Brandon Ingram and others that they didn't like how much he pressed. And it felt to me like that's exactly where and how game passes you by when you go to evolution of the three-pointer and young people can't deal with the hard-ass coach.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it puts a lot of pressure now on David Griffin, right? For making that move that quick. David Griffin's been the president of basketball ops there for 2.5 years, and he's had 2 coaches already, right? He had Alvin Gentry for 1 year. He got in before the year started. He had Alvin Gentry for 1 season. He had Stan Van Gundy for 1 season. Usually in the lifespan of a front office guy, you have your coach. He's there 3-4 years. Things aren't working out. Coach is a fall guy. You get your second coach. He's there 3 or 4 years. Then he's out. He's the fall guy again. And then maybe on coach 3, now we're like, wait a second. He's burning through coaches here. Are we convinced about your ability to select the right coach, let alone whether the coach did a good job or not? But that gives you almost a decade of cover. Griff has burnt through that in 2 years, 2.5 years. So now it's like there's a lot of pressure on him to get this next pick right, because at some point we're going to have to start asking, wait, do you know what you're looking for? In the case of Stan, I don't think the X's and O's part passed him by, Dan. I think Stan understood the game and was modern in his understanding of the game. But I do think the bedside manner thing is real. I was talking to a player maybe like 2 or 3 years ago that played for us in Phoenix. He's an old vet, and he was telling me, I mean, you could never work again in this environment. I was like, what do you mean? He said, no, you're too much of an asshole, pretty much. If you were here, everyone would hate you, and all these players would just go into a shell because you tell them the way it is, and that's not how we can communicate anymore. The communication style has to change, and that's when I was like, okay, maybe I'll never come back then. But the reality is, for the Stan Van Gundy's, for Jeff, who we keep hearing about a job maybe coming up and all that, for everyone who's been out for a couple of years, things are changing so much more rapidly that to go back to the way it was is impossible.
I mean, what did it land on?
What were the other topics again? I can't
Well, no, what did it land on? What do you mean? What were the other
I can't.
topics?
My glasses.
What do you, we're asking you what it landed on. What do you mean? What were the other topics? Just what did it land on?
Coaches getting fired?
I think it landed on Obama. I didn't even know that was on there.
Wow. Who put that on there?
I didn't know that was even on there. Who did put that on there?
I don't know, but I request the second spin. Please.
All right, spin it again. Oh, it landed.
Sixers.
Cinephobe.
Oh no, that's cinephile. Actually, I think that's what that landed on.
Oh, by the way, I have a bone to pick with you, Mr. Cody. You out here, you want to talk trash and talk tough with your fancy podcast where we talk to the newsmakers. Nobody wants to listen to newsmakers. You know what people want to listen to? Jokes. Jokes about bad movies. Or not bad movies, but movies that are poorly rated on Rotten Tomatoes and perhaps maybe didn't get a fair shake. Cinephobe is what the people want, sir.
Ascertain.
Thank you. Are we spelling that in honor of Amin? ASS at the start with ascertain. See you later.
Now, Dan Batard, I'd say ascertain should be a T-shirt that you can find on the World of Suey website. Now, Chris Cody doesn't want that. Chris Cody wants some other highfalutin word on his shirt.
See you later, Amin. Thank you.
Do you have anything for us before you leave?
On Jokic's crazy-ass rabid brothers, because those people are terrifying. And Haberstroh told us the story that Jokic himself is only afraid of his brothers and that they raised him throwing knives at him.
Well, let me just tell you, like Tom Haberstroh right now has been missing for the last 18 hours. So,
oh boy.
Look, I learned from Bomani about Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
Okay, fair
Be
enough.
careful, Amin. We care about you.
Okay, thank you, Amin. Well, I'm going to give you some weird breaking news.
And I got a police report, not a police report, a hotel report from the Delano, one of those Jokic brothers, just destroying a hotel room and being banned from the premises like a year ago.
Wow.
Because it's one of those guys, if you didn't see the video of this, Juju sent it out and it went viral because those guys look rabid. And you have to be. Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Are you a crazy person if you wear a camo shirt under a basketball jersey?
They probably saw the towel policy.
That's got to be 100%.
But these people looked rabid. These people, we've told you before about just be careful in general with the war-torn country stuff. For example, none of you want any part of a Bogdanovich. None of you.
None.
Like, just be very careful.
I'm good.
With all of that. Put that on the poll, Guillermo, at Le Batard Show. Do any of you, really, put it this way, really think about this for a second. Do any of you actually want a part of a Bogdanovich?
It's funny how that's turned, because it used to be when like the European guys entered the draft, they were the soft ones.
Garnett would pick on them.
Right.
Yes.
But now we kind of know, hang on a second, you don't mess with guys that have been in wars.
You don't even want any part of their brothers. Never mind.
No. Right. Oh, for sure.
Jokic himself is a loaf of bread. His brothers are nuts, and they looked rabid. One of them looked absolutely rabid. Did you see this video that people got scared for the same reason? Because they are drooling, frothing, 6'9" people that look like they're just made of granite, of bone cartilage. And if you hit them, nothing will happen other than you will harm yourself.
You'll hurt your fist.
I just saw a lot of people just recoil with some fear of, like, that feels all foreign. It feels like something that you see as a bodyguard in the movie Hostel outside of a place where they torture human beings. You just don't want anything to do with Jokic's brothers. I feel like we all had the same sort of visceral recoil of those people have lived more than I have. Those people have more scars than I do. Those people would disembowel me with like tools in their glove compartment.
The story from Haberstroh is that they were like playfully throwing knives at each other, right? I mean, that's
fun and games in the Jokic household.
Boys being boys.
We're in agreement, correct? Everyone had the same reaction to this. I think, Billy, I thought of you the other day because I think
Thanks.
This is Vin Diesel being quoted as saying of the next Fast and the Furious movie, quote, "I will say that nothing is off the table," end quote. I love that. I love that. What do you think he means by that?
Dan, nothing's off the table in F9. We all know that. I mean, they're going to space. We know that. Have you seen the reports about the Jurassic World crossover that could happen?
Yep.
Nothing's off the table, Dan. Nothing's off the table.
It's not in this one, is it? It's not going to be a Jurassic World.
No, well, maybe. Who knows? Nothing's off the table.
I will say, quote, that nothing is off the table.
How big is the table, though?
Big enough so that nothing could be off of it.
You know what's around the table, Dan?
I do not.
Family.
They only go a quarter mile at a time around the table.
Just some Coronas and family. That's what this life's all about.
What are you excited about in this next one? What do you know that is on the table other than space?
I know that John Cena is Vin Diesel's brother, and I believe twin brother. That I'm not certain of, but they are brothers, and they're on opposite sides of whatever their disagreement is.
Not that it's particularly relevant, but do we know the plot for Fast 9? Do we know what they're doing? Do we know what's going on?
It's the same plot.
It's going to be fast. It's going to be furious.
Yeah.
It's going to be the ninth one.
Time.
Yeah.
Plot.
We have a blurb here. I believe it says, Dom Toretto is living the quiet life off the grid with Letty and his son, but they know that danger is always lurking over the peaceful horizon. This time, that threat forces Dom to confront the sins of his past, again, to save those he loves most. His crew soon comes together to stop a world-shattering plot by the most skilled assassin and high-performance driver they've ever encountered, Dom's Forsaken brother.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
love a Forsaken brother.
Yes, you love. Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Do you love a Forsaken brother? The plot is just cars, and it is. Is it the most successful movie franchise ever? I don't know that we have any other nines out there. Do we? Do we have nine films made in one franchise and no end in sight?
Do you count like the Marvel or like DC Comics cinematic universes, or is this like a separate thing because it's all the same person starring in every
Bond
single
movies,
one?
I guess.
The Rocky Creed franchise, I believe, just did the 8th movie.
Did they get to 8 already? Okay.
2 Creeds and 6 Rockies.
What's the plot of the last one?
Creed just had a baby. So.
Oh, wow.
Also, Dan, a sad update, a subdate, if you will. It's not no end in sight. Allegedly, they will end after 11.
Oh, thank God.
But that's the plan for now. That's the plan for now.
I love the idea of we'll end our movie franchise after our 11th edition.
Well, don't forget about the spin-offs Hobbs and Shaw, which I believe there's a Hobbs and Shaw 2 coming. So that could go on for who knows
Wasn't that
how
one
long.
bad, Billy? I saw like
no.
on a critical basis, it was not reviewed very well.
How dare you? No, sir. That was not a bad movie. In fact, and this is not a popular take, I think one of the best movies under the Fast umbrella.
Wow.
Hobbs and Shaw. Yeah. Cameos aplenty if you're a fan of cameos and big names.
Look at how pleased he is with himself.
So pleased.
And what are you pleased about? That you just got out there with the controversial take that Hobbs and Shaw.
No, I'm not pleased. I'm not pleased about that because that's not popular in the Fast universe to say that aloud. That's something that has me on the outs, along with the fact that I said that I had never gone on the Fast and Furious ride at Universal. That's something that, the gearheads did not like for me to admit aloud.
You're on the outs with the Fast and Furious community?
With some. But, this isn't a time, again, guys, we're about a week out from it coming here to the States. This is a time about family. So we have to put our differences aside, much like the Toretto brothers, and we're going to have to get together at the end, get through this together. Family.
So would you like to hear the guest issue report from the Delano Hotel?
Ooh, please.
Oh, please. Are you kidding me?
Guest was extremely intoxicated and damaged the room. Guest
What do you imagine it takes to intoxicate a Jokic brother?
A lot, man.
A gas tanker of 151 proof. Guest was violent and out of control, endangering the other guests in the room as well as the hotel. That means the actual
Wow.
structure.
Entire hotel.
The actual structure. It's many stories high. Girlfriend of the guest was advised he cannot return. She may return to retrieve her items. Room is double locked and security must accompany her to the room. If guest returns to property, police must be called.
Wow.
And police will not want to come.
Just police?
Double locking. Wow.
And he's like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then he went off to do Triple X or whatever, the thing with the weird glasses. What was that movie called that he did?
Chronicles of Riddick.
I think so. I don't know. He did something, right? Where he thought that he wasn't going to be part of this anymore. So then the second one was like Paul Walker. And then that's when they like introduced Ludacris. And that's when they started introducing some of the other characters.
Was Tyrese was in the second one, right?
Yeah, Tyrese.
Yes.
We've talked about this a lot. Tyrese took quite the turn. So did Ludacris in terms of their character's evolution, right? So Tyrese started kind of like as just like this guy that was like muscle, right? Where like now in all the movies, he's kind of a joke. Like that he's like the butt of all the jokes. And Ludacris started as just a bit of a bookie that could kind of put anything together. And now he's like this tech whiz that knows how to do everything in all the movies. And it's like, how did we end up here with these characters? But I'm not going to ask. It doesn't matter with some of the stuff that's going on.
You learned from, was it Worm in the second movie that was in charge of like getting the GPS off all the cars? I have vivid recollection. It's the only Fast and Furious movie that I've seen in detail, because when I was a kid, it was in our, we had a SUV with a DVD player in the back. And we watched watched Too Fast, Too Furious about 147 times. So I know like every detail, but I think the character's name was Worm that like knew how to get the GPS and all that off so that their cars can no longer be tracked by the Miami PD.
You just said detail twice during that ramble, and the first time you said detail, and the second time you said detail. What's going on there?
I sense a continuity error in Fancy Lad's character.
So sometimes I like saying detail, sometimes I like saying detail. Both are correct. So
Tokyo Drift, the only Fast and Furious I've ever watched. Never seen any of them.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
You've been talking with authority on the subject.
Hold on.
Have not lived.
Wait. So you were on the set of the other one and you didn't like do the thing? Like I did it with the Bad Boys 3 or whatever it was called, right? Bad Boys 3. Where we were like went out and we were across the street. Was that 3 or 4? Whatever.
Bad Boys for Life. It was Bad Boys for Life.
Yeah, but it was number 3.
The third Bad Boys movie, yes.
Yeah, so like I went to see it just because we were in the background when they were shooting some stuff. You didn't have like any interest in seeing like, hey, let me see what this scene was like where I saw all of these damaged cars in the middle of the street.
Not really. I mean, to me, it was just I was really upset that they yelled at me about being on an active set. Well, I said,
how did they just let you walk on? Also, like that's not security.
Because it's Cleveland. They're like, wait, a pedestrian? There's actually a human here?
We didn't account for this.
I want to get paid for this. I'm an extra.
Wait, you guys are supposed to be underground in the underground mall labyrinth here. People don't walk on the sidewalks in Cleveland.
There's an underground mall in Cleveland?
It's a labyrinth.
Wow.
Steve
Martin was a prop comic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, wait, Woody, do you really not know what I'm talking about?
No, I've never been to Cleveland before. How would I know that in Minnesota all the buildings are connected together because it's freezing cold, but I did not know this about Cleveland.
Okay, I will tell this story that I don't believe you've heard. I was in Cleveland for a work trip a couple years ago, and I was looking for a Starbucks, and I went to the building where the Starbucks was, and there was no Starbucks there. And I was like, where is the Starbucks? So I walked in the building, thinking maybe it's like part of a hotel, and it's just this like massive foyer with a staircase. So I go down the staircase and I end up in this huge underground labyrinth shopping mall that spans underground multiple blocks, and there was a Starbucks in there. So I got my coffee. But it was so bizarre. And I feel like the underground labyrinth is as big as the city itself, which is not very big, but also at the same time, bigger than you would expect, I would say.
Didn't think that Cleveland would catch this many strays on today's podcast.
They deserve it.
I'm a Steelers fan. What do you expect?
Billy, I was surprised, Billy. Sorry, Jessica. I was surprised. Forgive me for taking this in another direction, but I didn't know how or why you ended up in Naked Gun World, because you're somebody who gets to these movies. Yeah, well,
such a good movie.
Well, because that franchise lasted how many did that was only 3? How is it that you ended up in Naked Gun World with Leslie Nielsen and a totally different O.J. Simpson than the one America knows right now?
So Dan, there's 3 Naked Guns, as you know, the original Naked Gun 2.5, and then Naked Gun 33 and a third. Now, I'm by Naked Gun 33 and a third. I haven't finished that one yet. I'm about 10 minutes in. Again, this baby just kind of interrupts all of these things. I try to watch the movies to get a bit of a break from the baby, and then it's like, well, change me, feed me, rock me, do this, do that.
Needy.
And it's
They're
like, all
needy,
right,
aren't
baby,
they?
I'll do this. But this is when I was supposed to be watching Naked Gun 33 and a third.
And
So how did I get there?
your
Yeah,
general
yep,
thoughts. I'm
yeah.
stunned to hear that you like this. You usually don't go back in the Wayback File of 20, 30, 40 years and actually like the movies we're presenting to you.
Well, the thing about Naked Gun is that it's kind of like a spoof of a movie, right? It's not an actual movie. It's not an actual action movie. It's just kind of like Leslie Nielsen doing Leslie Nielsen things, right? And here's a take. Naked Gun, the original one, baseball movie.
Yep.
I would put it up there with Field of Dreams in
Yep.
terms of best baseball movies ever, Naked Gun.
Uh-huh.
Put it on the poll, please, Guillermo. Was Naked Gun a baseball movie? Is that the one where Leslie Nielsen was a look at me umpire, the first
Yes,
one?
that's
Yeah.
exactly. And
Frank Drebin.
they showed a movie on MLB Network. It's a baseball movie.
That umpire scene is one of the greatest baseball scenes. I will fight the Jokic brothers, both of them.
No, you
Yes,
won't.
if anyone suggests to me that umpire scene is not one of the greatest scenes ever in any kind of baseball realm.
Look, it's Enrico Palazzo.
But he was moonwalking. The idea that Leslie Nielsen at 80 years old would be able to move like that. Oh my God, I'm sorry. You guys, how many of the people listening to this don't have any idea what we're talking about?
Most.
No
None.
clue. No clue.
Not
Oh
for
my
me.
God. Come on.
Wow.
man.
Sorry.
Honestly, Billy, I'm surprised that you're on the opposite side of this. Like, I agree with Dan. The notion that you were just watching, are you just watching random movies now because you have a child?
How did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, I went on and I'm like, I need to watch a movie. I watched Chad. I watched the whole series of Chad. So I was like, I got to move on past that. I was looking for things to watch. So then I started watching like movies. I'm like, let me watch a movie. And then I, stumbled across the James Bond movies, just the Daniel Craig ones. So I watched the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. And then I was like, let me see some other things. So I start doing, and then you do that thing in your cable where you start looking at actors and you're like, oh, let me find this actor. Let me see what they've been in. And this is a path that I was going to go on. And I'm like, never mind. I got to Rodney Dangerfield and I'm like, let me see Rodney Dangerfield's movies, right? And then I saw like all his movies and I was like, 19% seems really low even for me in terms of approval rating. Like, let me look for something else. And then I stumbled across this Naked Gun, a classic, one that I've never seen. Much like you guys, I'd seen that umpire scene before. I said, let me give this a shot. And it was bad, but it was good bad, and it was intentionally good bad. You know what I mean? And I think it holds up somewhat. I mean, there's some things that they could do nowadays, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't the worst. And just put this in the chat. It was the original Austin Powers, to the point that even some of the jokes that Austin Powers does are straight up ripoffs or homages or whatever you want to call it to Naked Gun. Like when they do kind of like the sex scenes where all of a sudden there's like rocket shootings and there's hot dogs and there's this and that, straight out of Naked Gun.
Did Rodney Dangerfield have a good movie other than Caddyshack? Is there a movie that you associate with Rodney Dangerfield? Am I forgetting something? I mean, I'm sorry. You've got a look of total shock and horror on your face.
Back to School?
Amazing. Yep. The triple Lindy.
It was Rodney Dangerfield, lest you need not know what we're talking about. Rodney Dangerfield as a sort of Olympic diver of some sort.
He had to go back to college, right? And he moves in and he gets on the diving team as part of his college experience.
If you want to know how I truly got to Rodney Dangerfield and then eventually Naked Gun, it's because when I was looking for movies and Rodney Dangerfield came up, a movie called The Godson came up, which was clearly a play on The Godfather. And it was a mafia movie. So I'm like, I'm going to watch The Godson. So when I come back, I can say I still haven't seen The Godfather, but I've seen The Godson. And then I was like 3 minutes in and I'm like, I can't watch any more of The Godson. I'm sorry. This isn't worth it. Even for the joke, this is not worth it.
Well, this sounds like a movie. This sounds like a job for Cinephobe.
Oh,
The
boy.
podcast where we watch movies that are
Ascertain.
poorly rated on Rotten Tomatoes and try to ascertain whether they're accurately poorly rated
Fair
or
shake.
maybe, just maybe, they didn't get a fair shake from Billy Gill. Cinephobe, wherever you get podcasts. This week, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
Oh,
the last movie Sean Connery ever made.
I want you guys to understand that as Louis Riddick interviews for the Texans job and for the Lions general manager job,
Jeez.
how you parlay an ESPN job into real power and how, as you listen to Amin, you don't. Louis Riddick is a front office insider who has been so good at television that now the Lions and Texans are saying, let's give him all the power. Amin is over here selling, ascertaining.
But I don't know, Dan, if you caught it. Amin told us before, he's too real for the NBA now. NBA can't handle him. He's too honest for players. They're too soft for Amin Al-Hassan's style of management.
You know, Dan, he might be having all the professional accolades and all the money and respect and all that, but I guarantee you, I have a more fun life than Louis Riddick.
Wow.
Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Can you guarantee that Amin Al-Hassan has a more fun life than Louis Riddick? Stugotz, why is it that you wanted to talk about Paul George? What is it about Paul George? Have you changed your mind? Are you willing to reinvent an opinion? A guy who I don't think we move all the time, right? We take these guys. It was Carmelo Anthony for a while, but now he gets to be beloved guy because he's no longer an integral player. But we will move and shift every time one of these guys disproves us, right? Because Paul George actually did it in one game in the bubble, but then we reverted back afterward once they were eliminated to mocking Paul George as someone who doesn't want big circumstances. But on those Pacers teams, playing against LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, he was a critical number one player who challenged them. And last night, he won an enormous game on the road in the playoffs when everyone is decimated. And so what is it that you wanted to say about Paul George?
I'm just confused as to what we do with Paul George, because I wanted to talk about it before last night's game. He's had a good playoff. He's had a good series, and we have spent a good deal of time mocking Paul George on this show. Not just us. A lot of people have, and perhaps deservedly so, but he has been great in these playoffs. And last night, my goodness, like, I didn't think Paul George was capable of that, to be the number one guy in a team in a big spot on the road against the best team in the NBA and give you that type of performance. To me, I almost want to apologize to him.
Whoa.
I mean, whoa. He's great. He's been great during these plays. Listen.
Shocking that Stugotz almost wants to apologize to him, getting close to an apology. What has to happen for there to be an apology?
He has to win an NBA championship.
Okay, he's never getting that.
No, but he has a shot this year. He really does. The Clippers have a shot.
Not without Kawhi.
Now that would be a story.
I'll apologize twice if he doesn't have Kawhi. What? 2 apologies. Double bonus apology. Oh my God. Now I want you to know that Kevin Durant had that game and Stugotz's response was do it again. And so when Stugotz offers the double possible apology, I don't believe him at all.
Kevin Durant validated everything I've been saying for years.
So stop this pivot, okay?
No.
Can you just that's how you thought? I said all along how great he is. Knock it off.
I just want you to hear me out for a second.
I don't want to hear you out. It's going to be filled with lies and backtracking.
The reason we celebrated Kevin Durant's performance is because he didn't do it with Kyrie Irving. He didn't do it with a healthy James Harden. Dan, he did that with Jeff bleeping Green. Okay? And that's my point. He doesn't need those guys. He needs Jeff Green. He needs an aging Blake Griffin and not much else. I mean, that is why this is so unfair and so ridiculous what he did. He's never been celebrated like that in his entire professional career. Never.
He was great.
Never.
That was his moment. That game was his defining moment.
I'm serious.
Stugotz, I want. You're so slippery.
I am.
What are you claiming you've always said about Kevin Durant? You're like one of his. You are one of his biggest critics across the years. You have been louder than just about anybody about the last 6 or 7 years of his career. How are you taking a victory lap on Kevin Durant having that game?
Because he knows I'm right now, Kevin Durant. Everything I said about him, the easy path and all that stuff. He knows I'm right because he knows if he just stayed put in Oklahoma City, he would have had a million of those nights. A million of them.
He did. You don't remember any of them. Don't tell me no. He did have those nights.
You don't have those nights. You don't have those nights when you join an all-time great team. You do it with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. They've already won a title. You don't have those nights when Kyrie and James Harden are around. You have those nights when you put Jeff Green, Blake Griffin, and some guy Shabbat on your shoulders, and you go win a big playoff game. That's how you have those nights. That's why he's being celebrated, and he deserves it.
for a night.
He won the MVP award
Whatever.
on the back of playing without Russell Westbrook. And took a team deep in the playoffs without Russell Westbrook.
We were laughing before we went on air today, and it's before you got in here today, about one of your new moves, which is, and we can't imagine what this is going to sound like if you're still doing this at 60. It's just so lazy. It's just garbled, mumbled gibberish.
Yeah.
And it's just you trying as little as a human being ever has to speak. Never mind a professional broadcaster. Your move of just moving away from the microphone with kind bar in your mouth and just.
It's always after sentences. Like, this is how I sound after sentences.
He's so good at it, though.
Yes,
He's the Michael Jordan of
He
it.
is the Michael Jordan of gibberish and words that aren't words that don't mean anything.
The next incarnation is him beginning sentences doing that. My sentences sound like this.
My mouth's getting
Is
tired.
that how it's going? Is that how he descends into retirement? Are his last words going to be?
You made some good points, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, those are good points.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did.
What is your point as it regards Kevin Durant? If he has a shitty game tonight, you're going to go right back to crushing him.
Well, no, Dan, here's my point, okay? He was celebrated the way he was celebrated because he did it with a bunch of bums. That's who he won that game with. And that's how you become celebrated in the NBA. When you can't beat a team, rather than come back again. Seriously, Dan.
Who did Michael Jordan beat with a bunch of bums?
Who did Michael Jordan beat with not Hall of Famers?
Who's anybody beaten with a bunch of bums?
Listen, Jordan won a ton of games with Scottie Pippen. I don't know how great Scottie Pippen is if he goes somewhere else. I don't.
We know how great he is. He's
I'm not so certain. Does he win 6 titles? I don't know.
He
didn't win 6 titles anywhere else.
He's a top 50 all-time player.
Right.
Nobody wins, Stugotz, the championship in that sport anymore with a bunch of bums. Like the closest we've seen is Kawhi Leonard recently or Dirk Nowitzki recently, but it's really hard to win with a bunch of bums.
Okay, teaming up with one guy. That's fine. But teaming up.
That's all he did.
No,
He didn't team up with the greatest team in the history of the NBA. He did not trade for James Harden.
Oh, but he wanted James Harden.
Who wouldn't? I mean, he shouldn't want James Harden. Okay, he should actively not
want to get
Hey, this
better.
needs to be more difficult for
Kevin
me.
Durant needed to veto, put it on
I
the
think
poll.
he woke up Wednesday and he was like, hey, you know what? Stugotz was right. This thing needs to be more difficult for me. Harden, get out of here.
Guillermo,
100%.
put it on the poll, Guillermo, at Levitard Show. Should Kevin Durant have stormed into the Nets front office and vetoed the James Harden trade, actively wanting his team to not get better?
It's too much,
Okay.
man. How much better do you want to be?
Stugotz, you're the one who's perpetually farming out stupidity to others because you don't want to do the work.
Yes, but Kevin Durant is not me. He is supposed to be superior.
He is supposed to be this amazing. How lazy? He's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be great. And he's not because he plays with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. So your official take is Kevin Durant's not great.
No, we didn't know until the other day that he was great.
Right.
Because before he just had so many people around him.
I saw the fire in the belly, Dan. I did for the first time in his career. Yep, I did.
He was in Seattle, Oklahoma City for 9 years without winning a title, and that wasn't enough for you.
No.
Westbrook and
Chris,
Harden there.
Chris, did it ever dawn on you when Oklahoma City's up 3-1 on the Golden State Warriors that the Warriors were so aggressive in getting him because they knew eventually that team was going to beat theirs? They knew it. So they needed Durant.
No, they went for Durant because they had 25
They didn't need
million.
Durant.
They had 25 million in cap space and they just lost the title and he's available. Just as we're saying with the James Harden thing, he's available, you go get him. Like if you're Golden State, why not try and go get him?
Stugotz is the whole point. You don't get Kevin Durant because you need to make sure that the Thunder don't beat you. You get Kevin Durant because you can get Kevin Durant.
It is a fairly amazing thing that Stugotz is trying to do here, taking a victory lap because Kevin Durant, he owes you
an apology. At the very
he
least.
owes you an apology.
Trying to help the guy out.
What is the nature of the apology? Just how do you imagine that happening? If Kevin Durant were to have a press conference today to apologize to you personally, what do you imagine that would sound like?
Hey, Stu, I've heard all the things you said about me, the easy path, and I thought you were crazy. I thought you were ridiculous. I needed to win titles. I was chasing rings. But you know what? Even after winning an NBA championship, even after winning Finals MVP, no one took me seriously. Not even my own teammates in Golden State took me very seriously. And you know what? It dawned on me. When I won a game with Jeff Green, when I won a game with Blake Griffin and some guy named Shamet, I was celebrated.
Landry
whatever. I was celebrated in a way that I've never been celebrated before. You know what? Because I took the hard path for one evening. I survived it, and you were right. And I should have stayed in Oklahoma City. Listen, he owes me an apology. I'm trying to help the guy out because, Dan, you compared him to me. He is not me. He's supposed to be greter than me. I mean,
constructive criticism.
Thank you. Just trying to help a guy out. I like KD.
After
What happened?
I like KD is something that you're now
Just wants
saying.
what's best for him, Dan.
Yes, I do.
I mean, Jimmy Butler, after having that kind of game in the finals against LeBron, couldn't summon much of anything from his body after that. Kevin Durant coming off of that injury and that game, 48 hours rest, and Harden busted up. What is a reasonable and fair expectation for him against Milwaukee tonight? Because you can't expect that again, can you? Or anything close to that?
Well, no, yeah, you can't expect that, but you can expect another great game. You hope that Harden, you see, hidden in all this, KD played 48 minutes. Harden played something like 45 or 46 in that game, and he's the one that's coming off of a fresh hamstring injury that is really tough to recover from, and he didn't really look as explosive or comfortable out there. I'm really curious to see how Harden's going to look with 48 hours of rest. I think Durant's going to be fine. He won't be 49 and 15 fine, but I think he'll be fine.
As Barkley says, the Bucks are an embarrassment and a dumb basketball team. As people rain down criticism on that collapse, which wasn't as bad as the Sixers collapse last night, what does Amin Al-Hassan say is the fairest criticism of the Milwaukee Bucks? I'm hesitant to do that off of a performance like that because I'd like to enjoy the historic immortal performance instead of finding ways that Budenholzer should have stopped it. But you tell me, I mean, the fairest criticisms among all of them, not going after Harden, not double teaming Durant. What are the fairest ones?
Oh, I think most of them were fair. I mean, they might sound harsh in terms of when people draw conclusions that, and this means Giannis isn't good. This means Bud is a terrible coach. But the criticisms are fair. You've got Giannis. Look, Giannis clearly idolizes Kobe Bryant on some level. He's worked out with him in the past. He's mentioned kind of Kobe as an inspiration. And so when you watch him play, you're seeing him try to do things to emulate Kobe. But dare I say it, he's emulating the wrong Laker. He should be trying to emulate Shaq. Again, like I said earlier, we wouldn't give Shaq the ball 23 feet, 9 inches away from the basket and say, make something happen. We get it to him right at the basket and then ask the other team, stop him. Oh, he's just big and strong and all he does is dunk. Okay, stop it. Make it not happen. You can't, right? But that starts with Shaq having the mentality that I need to get down there and be in my comfort zone, in my sweet spot. Giannis doesn't seem that either. Giannis doesn't have an understanding of where his comfort zone is, or, Bud and his staff are putting him in a position to not be successful. But it is insane to me that Giannis would dribble down the court and say, ooh, they're laying off me. I should take this three-pointer. That's not the kind of three you're supposed to ever take. It's insane to me that he would have James Harden on him, who is a good post defender. But his answer is, well, he's a good post defender. Guess I better shoot this fadeaway. He's not that good of a post defender. You're still 4 to 5 inches taller than him with a great wingspan. Get down into the paint and finish near the basket. And I think these things as points of emphasis aren't going over in Milwaukee's locker room. And then on the other end, you got to double team Durant at that point. What, you're afraid that Landry Shamet's going to kill you?
When we talk about physically strong players, I mean, I think one of the things that people don't understand about, for example, never mind Paul George, who's unbelievably strong, or Jimmy Butler, the sheer strength of James Harden, the physical strength of James Harden. When you think of guys in the league who people simply don't understand how physically strong they are, who are the guys you think of? I mean,
well, Harden's definitely on that list, and the other name is the guy he was guarding. It would be Giannis. Giannis is another one where like because he looks skinny, he looks ripped, but he doesn't look like he's super strong. He's incredibly strong. When he hits you, it's hard for defenders to react, because he almost immobilizes you. Other players, Chris Paul is really strong. Donovan Mitchell is really strong. Embiid obviously very strong. It's
right?
weird because a lot of what we're talking about is core strength. We're not talking about how many reps you can do on the bench or how many curls. It's talking about like core strength, and those guys that work out and work on that stuff are incredibly hard to move. And when they hit you, you feel it.
Who's physically stronger, James Harden or Kawhi?
I might lean towards Harden. He's like a fire hydrant. He's just immovable in that way.
That's interesting because most people would say Kawhi, right?
Well, Kawhi is unbelievably strong, and also a way I think people underestimate. You simply cannot do what he does. I mean, his hand size is ridiculous. So's Chris Paul's, but you cannot do what Kawhi does unless you're physically stronger than most of the people you're playing against.
Well, yeah. So Kawhi's hand size allows him to do some crazy stuff, and also he's got incredible length and reach, and is very strong throughout that. It's not like so he can hold you and corral you around. But we talk about Harden, we talk about that core strength, but also he's probably got the strongest hands in the NBA. The reason why Harden's able to draw so many fouls is when he goes to the basket, he does something that coaches teach you not to do, which is he extends the ball away from his body, right? Because he's trying to bait you to reach down and swipe down, right? And when you do that, he's got such a tight grip on the ball that he just holds and rips up and draws that foul. And that's all due to incredible hand strength that he has.
How could you possibly know he has the strongest hands in the NBA?
Because who else can put the ball out in front of them as many times as he does and not lose it, not get stripped? Rather, think about how many times when that happens, you get the whistle call, and you guys, he's flopping or he's just trying to draw fouls, but the ball never goes down. It never gets slapped down. It always goes up towards the basket. That's his hand strength.
I believe that we always, even though we're all watching it and interested, I believe we all underestimate all the time watching how great these people actually are at what they do and how much they work at it. So what does Amin say to the person today who is saying, Simmons, all you got to do, get in the gym and take 1,000 jumpers every day, take 1,000 free throws every day, as if that's not something he's already doing every day.
Is he doing it? Do we know that?
He's doing it. Of course, at least the free throws he's working out on. But again, I go back to my experience with Shaq. The guy shot like 85, 90% in practice. Shaq was so good in practice, his form looked different. He shot it looked like a regular jump shot. And then when he got in the games, remember, he cradled it and he kind of leaned forward and almost push shot it in. That's not how he shot in practice. But when he gets out there in those lights, that's how he feels. And that's why I always go back to, look, they're doing this mental block is because they're not comfortable. They're worried about letting the team down. They're worried about not being big enough for the moment. And all you have to do is remove that from them and say, look, I don't care, man. Shoot 40 free throws. Shoot 20 of 40. I guarantee you they're all going to be in foul trouble, and we'll be shooting free throws with the 10-minute mark of every quarter. And that's fine. But if you are if it affects the way you play, if you're running from the ball, if you're playing hot potato, now you're a liability. Now you're a guy that honestly doesn't really help us on the floor.
I mean, the one team we haven't really discussed is the Atlanta Hawks. I think they have a chance to win a championship. If for no other reason, they're simply the healthiest team that's left here. No?
Well, they lost DeAndre Hunter for the season. He was a big part of their success. Sure, they're healthy. The Suns, to me, are the ones that look like the biggest lock. Because even though Chris Paul is in protocol, allegedly he is vaccinated, which means his protocol will be shorter. And also, that series ain't over yet. So if you're the Suns, you're saying, okay, worst case scenario, he might miss game one. But the reality is, other than that, the Suns have been remarkably healthy. Paul had the shoulder thing, but clearly he's over that now. I think they're in the driver's seat right now when you look at Utah with Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley. You look at Brooklyn with all the stuff that's going on with them. You look at Philly with Danny Green and also Embiid playing with the torn meniscus. And then the Clippers missing Kawhi for the rest of the playoffs. And then the Hawks, I just don't think are good enough to get out of the East like that. So
you really petered out there.
Yeah.
Usually thoughts don't end with so.
I didn't have an end point.
Yeah, you just sort of gave up on it. I wanted to ask the group about, he's not quite as good at that as you are, Stugotz. I wanted to ask the group about a story the other day that we never got to, which is, and you do not hear or see this very often, a lot of people at TNT behind the scenes are complaining about what has happened with AT&T coming in and making changes. And Charles Barkley publicly, you don't see a lot of this where people give voice to, I'm annoyed by my employer here. And Charles Barkley publicly said, because he's gotten a talking to about something he's done for many years, which is make fun of the women of San Antonio for being ugly. He has done this for many years, and he has been told specifically to stop that. And his response is, I've been told to stop that. And I can't wait till 60 years old so I can get my ass out of here, because Charles Barkley does not want to be told at this point or any point in his life what he can and cannot say. And he has been one of the guys who is Teflon, even though I understand totally an employer in this spot, in this climate, telling him, Charles, rein that back. It's not an important enough joke to be doing that.
Small correction. He actually calls the women of San Antonio bigger as far as size is concerned. He calls the women of Georgia ugly.
Okay, very good correction. Thank
Very
you.
important. Seriously,
I don't know
Yes.
which one it is that AT&T is correcting him on, but when that guy specifically, who has gotten immunity throughout his life, is telling you, complaining about cancel culture, I find myself surprised that anyone in any climate is telling Charles Barkley to not be Charles Barkley, when Charles Barkley has been what he's been for as many years, at least in part because he has some sort of strange, weird immunity that no one else in the media has, even though what he's saying should stop. I think we can all agree that it should stop, even though he's been doing that for many years.
It seems like a small concession for Charles to make.
Well, he doesn't want to make any concessions.
I know he
His whole
doesn't.
brand is no concessions.
Right.
Yeah, they're not asking him not to be Charles Barkley. They're just saying stop fat shaming women in San Antonio. It, like Stugotz said, it's just like a minor thing he can stop doing. There's a whole other list of things he's allowed to do. So I don't really see why it's a big deal for him to just realize that in 2021, making fun of women isn't that funny. Like, I don't think it's funny. I don't know what's funny about women being fat.
I don't know what's funny about men being fat
joke?
either.
Yes.
Men fat jokes aren't that funny either to me, if I'm being honest.
I don't think so either. They're selling hippos at the Miami Zoo, those wax hippos with my name on them. And I'm not okay with this either. The objection, Jessica, by Charles Barkley is, no one tells me what to say on anything. That's what I do. That's the space that I reside in. And I understand why he would buck against anybody telling him that he can't say anything, because that's the whole brand. It's what you're paying him to be, Charles Barkley. And so I understand why he would object at this point in his life, where he's just trying to get to 60 so he can retire, that he doesn't want the new bosses governing him on whatever their moralities are, any of them.
Right, but when you're on TV, there are certain things you're not allowed to say. It's not like he has free, like, carte blanche. He can say whatever he wants. There's rules when you're on television, and this is part of that, is that you want to cater to your advertisers or your audience, whoever it is that they're trying to make happy by not allowing these jokes. Like, you can't go on TV and say the F word. Like, there's a whole list of things you can't do on TV. This is part of that.
The rules don't apply to him. Never have.
Yeah, but now they do. So that's, they just do. And it's a small rule. It's a small concession to make. Like, hey, you're hurting people's feelings. Stop doing it. We're not comfortable with it. You've had run-of-the-mill around here forever. We're making one small ask. Please change it.
What is run-of-the-mill around here forever?
Well, he can do whatever he wants. He has had the ability to do things that no one else can, and I understand. Man, what does Charles Barkley need bosses telling him anything?
He doesn't.
About? I mean, that's obvious. He doesn't.
But I do think that, like, if let's say a colleague, like let's say Candace Parker, comes up to Charles Barkley and says, hey, let's have a conversation about what you say about women in San Antonio. Perhaps he's more receptive to it. It's specifically who it's coming from. But, like, I do think that, like, if a respected colleague said, hey, can you not? I would imagine Charles might be receptive to that. But, yeah, you're talking about the notion of being told what to do by bosses not being received well. But I do think the message is one worth hearing.
Does it not buy him anything, though, that he clearly is smiling when he does it at this point? Maybe the first time he did it, he actually meant it, but it's become a bit at this point.
What? What are you talking about?
What? He does it jokingly. Like his intention.
Do you think if you're a woman watching the show and Charles Barkley is talking about fat women in a disparaging, misogynistic way, you're like, well, he's smiling, so he's not talking about me. It's just a joke. It's funny. What are you talking about?
I mean, as someone who gets called fat all the time, I do take with a grain of salt when people are like, "Oh, it's
no,
the bit."
But it's different. They're allowed. Look, this is an inequality that is totally allowed when it comes to being in the positions of power. Of course, Chris, that's not going to change with either you or I. It is different when you're making fun of those in power than when you're not. And to be clear, understand totally why it is. Charles is wrong on this one. Yeah. He should stop doing that. But I also understand why Charles Barkley specifically would call out his employer on nobody needs to be telling me anything about how to be Charles Barkley, because Charles Barkley has lived his entire professional public career not giving a bleep what anyone has to say about anything that he has to say. My God, for the last 15 years, he has been held up by white people every time he does the respectability politics on black people. Like every single time, Charles Barkley has been turned into a symbol by white people who believe a certain thing. And then Charles Barkley says them also about black people, and he gets waved around as somebody that infuriates black people because of some of the opinions that he has. As he tells you at every turn, the hardest decision I have to make every day is between a four seasons and a Ritz-Carlton. But I get why it is that Charles Barkley at this stage in his career, having profited more than anyone possibly could off of decades after being an athlete on Saturday Night Live and everything else, on the brand of I'm the guy who appears on Sports Illustrated breaking slave chains in a cover shoot. I'm the guy who tells you in a McDonald's commercial, I am not a role model. It's the whole brand. It's the whole center of what it is that he is. And so if I were him, how would you not buck on anything corporate is telling you? Never mind whether you want to listen to human beings. Hey, this is hurtful. This is an indecent thing to do at any time. Don't do it anymore. I think Charles is just bucking on the idea of new ownership is suddenly telling him what to do when no one's ever told him what to do.
I just don't get how he's gone away with it this long to begin with. Like, what if there is a fat woman in corporate? Why are we assuming that it's a man telling him to stop making this joke?
Oh, come on, Cody, Jessica. It's always a man. Come on, Jessica. If it's at the top, if it's at the top of corporate, it's how we've gotten away with that joke for the last 15 years that he's made it. It's because it's never a woman at the top of corporate. It's the reason that you could it's the reason you could fat shame the man at the top of corporate.
I mean, but boo-hoo, Charles Barkley. Like, sorry, you have a job and now your boss is telling you to do something. Like, you get paid millions of dollars. Like, how hard is it to have to follow rules? Everyone has to do things they don't want to do at work. Like, just don't call people fat. Like, that's a simple rule. Boo-hoo, I'm so sorry that your life is so hard. Or you, like, if you don't want to be told, like, you can just quit. I mean, no one's stopping him from quitting if he wants to run around just calling people fat or whatever it is that he wants to do all day. Like, if this is such a horrible injustice that he's going through.
You don't have to wait till 60. I do think there's something to what Whittingham said. It's the messenger on this one. Perhaps if it was a peer, perhaps if it was Candace Parker, perhaps if you did it. Dan, I have daughters.
No, it's
different.
It's not
I'm sorry.
Candace Parker's job. It's not Candace Parker's job to stand up for women and say, hey, this joke's misogynistic. She's trying to do her job. She's a basketball analyst. That's why she's on the show. This is not her job.
Charles should just do it, regardless of the messenger. I agree with you, but maybe the messenger would be able to get the message across in a way that Charles would understand, be able to digest and say, okay, I'm not going to do this moving forward.
Boo-hoo.
I think he's pissed no matter who the messenger
Have
is.
real problems. How about that?
You should know that Charles Barkley isn't saying boo-hoo. He's just saying he's outing corporate. He's saying they're trying to manage me. He's saying, look, not a lot of people are doing that. How much of that have you seen? I see John Oliver do it. How many others? I saw David Letterman do it. How many other times do you see someone who's cashing those checks the size of Charles Barkley, telling you, hey, they're not letting me be Charles Barkley. Whether you think I'm right or wrong on this, he is calling out corporate.
I guess the main difference here is being on the right versus wrong side of history, right? Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true, right? Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like Charles Barkley is arguing on behalf of something that is not true. Like that ultimately he's on the wrong side of history on this one. He wants to make a joke that is outdated and, as Jessica correctly pointed out, misogynistic. And he's arguing on behalf of it, whereas like John Oliver is trying to have a go at his corporate overlords to kind of signal, hey, I'm going to have a go at anyone no matter who they are and if it, impacts your financial interests in any way.
Another example of someone doing that to their boss is Dan Levitard.
Yeah, that's true.
Last week on Freedom, yelling at John Skipper and telling him,
Look at what I had to do to get to that point. Like, I had to create my own goddamn company so that there wouldn't be any corporate overlords. Like, I mean,
and there still was one.
And there still was one. And I was shocked. And he burst into the room.
Waste of time.